All right, hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. And this time we're tackling something I think we all struggle with a little bit. It's that stubborn belly fat, It's tricky,
It really is.
but we want to give you practical tips, things you can actually use, right?
Right.
Not some crazy diet or
Right.
needing an expensive gym membership.
Right, exactly.
So we found this really cool podcast and they broke it down so simply. And they had this catchy name for it, the 4 S's. Have you ever heard of
I
this?
have, yeah. It's a good one.
It's so easy to remember. So it's sitting, sugar, sleep, and stress.
Pretty much sums it all up.
I know, right? And it's such a good way to think about it because those are all things that, we can probably relate to a little bit. But I don't know about you, but I was surprised by some of the stuff they talked about.
Me too, yeah.
So, okay, let's just dive right in. First up is sitting. This one kind of blew my mind. Like, I knew sitting all day wasn't great for you,
Right.
but I had no idea how much it actually contributes to belly fat. What's the deal with that?
Well, when you think about it, when you're sitting for long periods of time, your body kind of goes into like rest mode and your calorie burn goes way down.
Makes sense.
And those fat burning enzymes, they kind of slow down too.
So it's like even if you work out, if
Yeah.
you're sitting all day, it's still working against you.
Yeah. It's like you're undoing all your hard work.
It's so frustrating.
I know.
So what can we do about that? Like, we can't all just quit our jobs and, become yoga instructors on the beach, right?
Right. Well, the podcast had this great tip that I've actually started doing. It's so simple. You just set an alarm on your phone to go off every hour. And when it goes off, you just get up and move for a few minutes.
Oh, I love that. So easy.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, like just a walk around the office or some stretches, just anything to break up the sitting time.
I like that.
It really helps.
Okay, so simple but effective. All right, now for the S, I think we're all dreading a little bit. Sugar. We all know it's not exactly a health food, but the podcast really got into the specifics of how bad it is for belly fat.
Oh, it's terrible.
So what's the connection there? Like, why is sugar such a belly fat villain?
Well, sugar, it triggers this whole cascade of hormones, especially insulin. And insulin seems to tell your body to store fat right around the middle.
Oh, wow. So it's not just empty calories, it's actually directing the fat to go to our bellies.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's so unfair.
It is what it is.
So how do we fight back against this sugary enemy?
Well, one of the biggest things they emphasized was focusing on protein and fiber. It helps you feel fuller for longer, so you're less likely to crave those sugary snacks.
That makes sense. Like, if you're satisfied, you're not going to be reaching for the candy bar.
Exactly. It's about making those healthy choices that keep you feeling good and energized.
You know what? I actually tried that. I used to have a candy bar every afternoon for a pick-me-up, but I swapped it out for some almonds and an apple. And honestly, I felt so much better. I had more energy, and I didn't get that sugar crash later.
That's awesome.
Okay, so we've covered sitting and sugar. 2 down, 2 to go. Next up is sleep.
Oh, this is a big one.
I know, it's so important for everything. But again, I was surprised by just how much it impacts belly fat. I thought it was mostly about energy levels and mood.
Right, yeah.
But it's way more than that, right?
So when you don't get enough sleep, your body produces more of the stress hormone, cortisol. And as we talked about, cortisol loves to store fat, particularly around the belly.
So it's like a double whammy. You're tired and stressed, and your body is just packing on the pounds.
Pretty much, it's not a good combination.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So how much sleep do we actually need to keep that cortisol in check and protect our waistlines?
The podcast recommended aiming for 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep every night, which I know can be tough for some people, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, it's like a nightly investment in our health.
Exactly. And it's not just about the quantity of sleep, but the quality too. Like making sure your bedroom is dark and quiet and avoiding screens before bed.
Right, creating that relaxing sleep sanctuary.
Exactly. It makes a huge difference.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the final S is stress. I feel like this one is just unavoidable these days, right? It's everywhere.
It is, yeah.
But the podcast really opened my eyes to just how sneaky it is when it comes to belly fat. Because it's not just about stress eating right.
Right. So, as we talked about, stress triggers cortisol release, which leads to belly fat storage. But it also messes with our eating habits. When we're stressed, we tend to crave those comfort foods that are high in sugar and fat.
Tell me about it. I'm a total stress eater. When things get crazy, I just want all the chips and chocolate.
Yeah, I get that.
So it's like a double whammy. Our hormones are working against us, and our brains are telling us to make bad choices.
It's a tough cycle to break.
So what can we do? Like, how do we manage stress in a way that protects our waistlines and our sanity?
They had some really good tips. One of the simplest ones was to just be more mindful. Like, before you automatically reach for that bag of chips, just pause and ask yourself, am I really hungry or is this just stress talking?
That's so smart. It's like interrupting that automatic response.
Exactly. And even if you are truly hungry, try to make a healthier choice. Like instead of chips, maybe have some fruit with nut butter or some veggie sticks with hummus.
Okay, so mindfulness and healthy swaps. What else did they suggest?
They also talked about finding healthy ways to de-stress, like deep breathing, meditation, or even just spending time doing something you enjoy. Something that helps you relax and recharge.
Yeah, like taking a bath or reading a book or listening to music.
Exactly. Anything that helps you unwind and let go of that stress.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 S's: sitting, sugar, sleep, and stress. It's amazing how much these everyday habits can impact our belly fat.
It is, yeah.
But what's really cool is that it's not about being perfect, right? It's about making small changes and finding what works for us.
Exactly. And the good news is that even small changes can make a big difference over time.
So we don't have to overhaul our entire lives. We can just start with one small step at a time.
That's the best way to do it. And once you start making those changes, you'll be amazed at how much better you feel.
So what's next? Like, how do we put all this knowledge into action and actually start shrinking that belly fat?
That's what we're going to talk about in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to get into some practical strategies for making those changes stick. So stay tuned. It's like they all kind of work together.
Yeah, it's like they're all connected.
Yeah. So if you're not sleeping well, you might be more stressed, and then that can make it harder to resist those sugary snacks.
But it totally makes sense.
It's like this domino effect.
Oh, it's a domino effect. But then that also means that if we can just like get one of these things under control, it could have like a ripple effect on the others.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you start sleeping better, you might find that you're less stressed, and then you're not craving those sugary snacks as much.
I like that. Okay, so this 4S framework,
Mm-hmm.
it's more about like a lifestyle change than just a quick fix.
Right. It's not about finding some crazy diet or some crazy workout routine. It's about making gradual progress.
Yeah, no crash diets needed.
Exactly, because those never work in the long run, right?
No, they never do.
You have to address the underlying habits and behaviors.
This is feeling much more sustainable already. I like this.
It is.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, where do I even begin?
Mm.
What would you recommend? Like, which of these S's would you say is like the most important to focus on first?
That's a good question. I would say if I had to pick one, it would be sugar.
Really?
Especially if you're drinking a lot of sugary drinks or eating a lot of processed snacks.
Because of that whole insulin belly fat connection?
Exactly. Cutting back on sugar is like cutting off the fuel supply for belly fat.
That makes sense.
It's a really powerful first step.
So like swap out the soda for water.
Exactly. Or unsweetened tea. And instead of chips, grab some fruit or some nuts.
And those are like small changes, but they can make a big impact.
Huge impact.
And what I also like about it is it's like once you start making those healthy choices,
Yeah.
it kind of leads to other healthy choices.
Yes, totally. Like if you're not constantly spiking your blood sugar with sugary treats, you're naturally going to feel less hungry,
Right.
which means you'll probably eat less overall.
It's a chain reaction.
It is, and when you're eating those whole foods instead of the processed stuff, you're getting more nutrients and fiber, which is great for your digestion and your overall health.
Okay, so it's like a win-win all around.
It really is. It's about making choices that nourish your body and make you feel good.
Okay, I love that. And, we had talked about how these 4 S's are all connected.
Yeah.
So how does reducing sugar impact sleep?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, think about it. When you eat a lot of sugar, you get those energy spikes and crashes, right?
Yes.
And those fluctuations can actually disrupt your sleep patterns. It can make it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep.
I've totally experienced that. If I have like a sugary dessert too close to bedtime, I always wake up in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by stabilizing your blood sugar, you're creating a more balanced internal environment, which is much more conducive to restful sleep.
Which then helps us manage stress and, make
Yep.
healthier choices overall.
Exactly. It's all connected.
It really is. It's like a positive feedback loop. Like when you start doing good in one area, it helps you do good in other areas.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about stress for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we all know it's bad for us.
Yeah.
But I think the podcast really drove home how much it contributes to belly fat.
Yeah.
And not just because we tend to stress eat, but because of like the cortisol.
Right, exactly. So when we're stressed, our bodies go into like fight or flight mode, and that releases cortisol.
Right.
And as we've discussed, cortisol loves to store fat, especially around the belly.
So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
The stress makes us want to eat all the comfort food. And then it also tells our bodies to store that fat in the worst possible place.
It's a tough one.
So what can we do? Like, how do we manage stress in a healthy way?
Well, the podcast talked about things like deep breathing exercises, meditation, even just spending time doing activities you enjoy.
So like finding things that help you relax.
Exactly.
So what do you think about those kinds of things?
I think they're fantastic. I mean, deep breathing is so powerful because it helps activate your body's relaxation response,
Right.
which counteracts the stress response, and you can do it anywhere, anytime.
Easy peasy.
Exactly. And meditation, even just for a few minutes each day, can help calm your mind, reduce anxiety, improve focus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And even just like taking a walk in nature,
Oh, that's a good one.
being present in the moment, engaging in activities that you enjoy, these are all powerful tools for stress management.
That makes sense.
It's about finding what works for you and making it a regular part of your routine.
So it's not about like eliminating stress completely.
Right, because that's impossible.
Yeah, but it's about managing it in a healthy way.
Exactly. It's about building resilience and developing coping mechanisms that serve you well.
And it's about recognizing that self-care is not selfish.
It's essential
It's essential, yes.
for our well-being.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The link between sitting and belly fat, the dangers of sugar, the importance of sleep, and the impact of stress.
We have.
But the key takeaway here is that small, consistent changes can make a big difference.
Exactly.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Yes, and it's about finding what works for you and your lifestyle.
Exactly. It's about creating a lifestyle that supports your health and happiness, both physically and mentally.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So what's next for our listeners? We've explored these 4S's. We've talked about strategies for making changes. What do we do now?
Well, I think the next step is to identify one or two areas where you feel most motivated to make a change. Start small, be consistent, and celebrate those successes along the way.
Love that. So maybe it's setting that hourly alarm to move more, or swapping out those sugary drinks for water,
Exactly.
or incorporating some deep breathing exercises, or maybe even just scheduling some time for yourself to do something you love.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are resources available, like this podcast, to support you on this journey.
And speaking of this podcast, we've got even more to dive into in the next part.
We do.
We're going to be exploring that link between belly fat and inflammation, which is fascinating.
Fascinating stuff.
And we'll give you even more strategies for making those changes stick.
Stay tuned.
All right, so welcome back to part 3 of our deep dive on belly fat. We've covered a lot of ground already, talking about those 4 S's and how they all work together. But now I want to get into something that the podcast touched on that I found really interesting, and it's this link between belly fat and inflammation.
Yeah, it's kind of a hidden danger.
So I always thought of belly fat as more of like a cosmetic concern. Like it's not great for how your clothes fit, but the podcast really emphasized that it's a genuine health concern.
Oh, absolutely.
So tell me more about that connection.
Well, the thing is, belly fat, especially the kind that surrounds your organs, is what they call metabolically active.
Interesting.
So it's not just sitting there passively, it actually releases inflammatory substances into your body.
Wow. So it's like having this low-grade fire simmering inside you all the time.
That's a great way to put it. And that chronic inflammation, it's linked to all sorts of serious health problems.
Like what kinds of problems?
Well, you're talking about things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, even cognitive decline.
That's scary.
It really is.
Okay, so that's definitely a huge motivator to get this belly fat under control.
Right. It's not just about how you look, it's about your long-term health.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm also curious about how those 4 S's that we've been talking about, how they fit into this whole inflammation picture.
Well, the cool thing is that the lifestyle changes that we've been talking about, like reducing sugar, improving sleep, managing stress, they don't just help reduce belly fat directly, but they also help combat inflammation.
Oh, so it's like a double win.
Exactly. You're tackling the problem from multiple angles.
So it's like a win-win all around.
Exactly. And it's just a good reminder that this is a journey, not a quick fix. It's
Yeah.
about making sustainable changes that you can stick with long term.
I love how the podcast talked about finding activities that you actually enjoy,
Yeah,
because it shouldn't feel like a chore to be healthy.
absolutely. Like, if you hate running, don't force yourself to run. Find something that brings you joy, whether it's dancing, swimming, hiking, whatever.
I love that.
It's all about moving your body and feeling good.
So true. But speaking of consistency, I know they emphasize that on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
How important is it really?
I mean, consistency is key. It's much better to do a little bit every day or most days than to try and cram it all in at once.
So like 20 minutes 3 times a week is better than an hour once a week.
Exactly. Especially if you're enjoying what you're doing.
I like that because I think a lot of times people get overwhelmed and they think they have to do these huge, intense workouts to see results.
Right, and then they burn out quickly.
Exactly.
It's about finding that sweet spot where it's challenging but also enjoyable so you can stick with it.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway that you want our listeners to remember?
Well, if I had to pick just one, it would be that small, consistent changes in your everyday choices, they can have a profound impact on your belly fat and your overall health.
Yeah, and those changes don't have to be drastic. They can be things like cutting back on sugar, getting a little more sleep, finding healthy ways to manage your stress.
Right. It's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
Exactly. And it's about empowering yourself to take control of your health.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive for me, and I hope everyone listening has learned some valuable tips and tricks for tackling that stubborn belly fat and just improving their overall health.
Me too. It's been fun.
So before we go, we always like to leave our listeners with a little something to think about. And the question I have for you today is this. If even these small lifestyle tweaks that we've been talking about, if they can impact belly fat, what other surprising connections might there be between our daily habits and our overall health?
That's a great question.
That's something to ponder, right?
It is. It makes you realize that we really do have a lot of control over our health.
Exactly.
More than we think sometimes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive on belly fat.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, small changes can make a huge difference. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep taking care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.